This discussion is going to start with flipped classrooms. So let's dive right into it. The first question deals with, does the flipped classroom work for everybody? I mean, it encompasses all ages, all types of learners. And the easy answer is no, it doesn't work for everybody. The research to back that up is in the readings that we had to do. It seemed like all the readings tended to be towards higher education, and some of that applies to all learners at all levels, where sometimes the learner really wants direct one on one interaction where they get notes and how to study and taught how to digest the material in class instead of a video lecture. To me, it's just a change of thought. And the research deals with that too, with it's a way of thinking differently about class. That class is not just where you sit and consume material. You become producers of the material. You don't just sit through a lecture and mindlessly take notes. You actually apply what you should have learned. And some of that is coming to class prepared. Now, that's where it gets into that type of learner. Let's say that you struggle with time management and you just didn't do the preparation. Well, that means that you're not really going to be ready to learn the material within class when you start applying it. That's a big problem, especially in K-12 education, where not everybody has equal access to technology, especially if you're in a rural area where not even everybody has internet access. That's going to be a real hindrance to the flipped classroom in a K-12 setting. At the university level, it's going to come down to, is the person responsible enough to take ownership for that learning? And that's just a change in thought as well, where the student is asked to take more responsibility for the work. And it's not just the instructor's job to give content. The student is actually responsible for preparing to learn for that content. The next part of this is providing some examples. I did partially a flipped classroom whenever I was teaching. I'm currently an instructional technology specialist, so I try to help teachers integrate this. I was in a K-12 setting, actually a 7th grade social studies classroom, and I couldn't implement the flipped classroom completely because my students didn't have devices to take home. Some of them didn't have internet access either. But we would do video lectures. And what I found helpful with this, if you do a video lecture where you go through the notes, for one, you can go through it much faster because you're not having to pause and wait for students to write down answers or write down their notes. But also, it can be reused over and over again for the student to review. That also applies to any student that's absent. If a student misses a class period, they didn't miss the actual lecture or the notes. And for social studies especially, what I found was if I gave notes in that format, it would be simply when did it happen and what happened. And then the in-class time was devoted almost entirely to why did this happen, or dealing with the bigger issue, talking conceptually, not just taking down notes of the what and the when, but really diving into the content and looking at it conceptually, not just looking at dates and figures and times, the things that students can Google. The other example that I can think of is in math. A lot of math class periods are spent copying down examples and notes, not even working out examples, but just copying them down. So if the students had the responsibility to write those down, either at home or a lot of high schools especially are implementing a power block or a time where it's for remediation or some time like that, that would be the perfect time to get down lecture notes, things that you don't necessarily need the instructor to be present for. And then when you come to class, that's where you do the typical homework or the problems where you apply what you know. You take that ownership and you apply it. So the last thing are a list of tools. And these vary greatly depending on the year. That was something that was brought up in Module 1 with trends. As trends change, so do the tools. What used to be PC-based or what had to be installed as a program now is cloud-based. I use a lot of Google recording things, but Audacity is one that I've used for audio recording, especially if I'm trying to record podcasts. It's available on PC and Mac. It's completely free, and it's a great program for recording MP3 audio, and then you can post that to any website or anything. You can really just hand it out so that students can hear it. And I used audio recording a good bit whenever video was not necessary. The next thing, Screencastify for screencasting. Screencastify is a Chrome extension. I like it better than Screencast-O-Matic, mainly because since I use a Chromebook a good bit for education, I use the extension and it has pretty much all the features that I need for screencasting. Zaption is also for video content. It allows me to run my video straight through that, but also embed questions to where the video actually pauses and poses that question. So it helps deliver some of that content and helps the student digest the content while they're watching the video, not at the end asking them, did they understand? Now, going with some of this for the video content, if I didn't record things, I forgot to put it in this slide, but YouTube has been a great source too for finding educational channels to where I can take video content that other people have created and give out as resources. The last thing is having a way to house all the content. It's not effective to give your content out in links or email. Having a place to house it. So whether it's a Google site where you embed video or post links to that, a Google Classroom, or any other LMS like Canvas. My school system uses Canvas quite a bit, and it's become a great LMS just to house the content. So in order to wrap this up to start the discussion, what are your thoughts on the flipped classroom? Is it really successful? Is it something that everybody can do? Or is it something that everybody can do in parts? Because what I've seen is it depends on the level. At higher education, it seems like it's very more doable because you don't have that issue with devices. As you go into the K-12, it very much depends on your area with the access to technology and the access to high-speed internet. So what are your thoughts on this? Let's carry on this discussion and really start diving into the idea of what a flipped classroom is.